Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you might be watching this in the world, whether you're in Peterborough or anywhere. As I said, I'm Wayne Fitzgerald. I'm the leader of Peterborough City Council, and we're just about to start another my Ask the Leader sessions. And it's quite a packed agenda of questions this afternoon. And indeed, we have a live guest, which is Robert Clark, who's on the screen now. You can see him there. And also Ken McCurlin, who's from the communications team at the council. And hiding his bushel somewhere or light under a bushel is Steve Cox, who's from the Combined Authority, will be here to talk about buses. So we are, as I say, got an action-packed program tonight in terms of the number of questions, all sorts of things. So we'll get into the first question. And just a reminder, Ask the Leader is your chance as local residents or whoever to come on and ask me any question you like, and I'll try to find out the answers for you, either directly from myself or bring in the relevant people to do so. And you can get in touch and take part. Ask the Leader at peterborough.gov.uk. So we'll kick on and come to the first question. And there's several questions on a similar subject concerning the proposed development of the East of England Showground and how that will affect the future of speedway racing in Peterborough. So, as I say, I'm pleased to say Robert is joining us. So Rob Clark is here tonight to ask one of these questions. So you want to go ahead and ask the question, Rob?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you fine. Yes.
Okay, so just, a little bit about me. I'm nearly 43. I'm born in Peterborough. I've had 4 houses. I've lived there the whole of my life. I'm a big fan of Peterborough, obviously. I've stuck around, and I'm a Speedway fan. So my question's coming from that, of a perspective of a Speedway fan. And this is my question. When will Peterborough Council be enforcing the Peterborough local plan, specifically LP30 and LP36, against AEPG with their plans to destroy the Showground Sports Stadium, home to the Peterborough Speedway team? Surely it is now time for the Peterborough Council to step in and mediate between AEPG and the owner or future owners of the Panthers, cut a deal to allow Speedway to continue at the Showground in the short term, whilst AEPG and the council help relocate the Panthers as needed under the Peterborough plan to secure a long-term future of our club for the future generations, and not just for me, for my kids and my kids' kids. So that's the basic crux of the question.
Great question, Rob, and very topical. It said in, was I aware of what's going on? Well, of course I'm aware. For those that don't, I've lived mostly in the Ortons since 1980. So I'm very much aware of the Speedway and what it means to people like yourself in Peterborough. My own family are fans of Bellevue Aces, by the way, because originally I'm from the Northwest, so many, many years ago, but I've lived here a lot longer. So I've always had a kind of connection to Speedway, and having lived in and around the Showground, I've seen what's gone on. But it's a difficult issue, and there is no easy answer. So what I'll do is I'll give you the matter of fact stuff first, if that's okay. As in, I don't determine planning applications on a personal basis. I can't either approve them or refuse them. There is legislation and a local plan and all the other things as you mentioned. So let me tell you where the planners are at. So Sylvia Bland is our head of planning, and she has responded as follows. So please forgive the rather dry possible answer. 2 planning applications have been submitted in relation to the East of England Showground site. One of the applications, she's even given me the number for people who want to look it up, 23/00400/out, and out means outline. Now, it will result in the removal of the facility that is currently home to the Peterborough Speedway team, if approved. The applications are at an early stage of consideration, and the consultation for local residents and statutory and non-statutory consultees has not yet expired. So it's still ongoing. The existence of Peterborough Speedway is recognised within the application and the loss of the facility to proposed development, and that will be taken into account in the determination of the applications. It is correct that local plan policies, LP30, LP36, amongst others, apply. However, it is not strictly correct that the only option for policy compliant development is that a suitable alternative site be provided. The following extract from LP30 states that either criteria K, L, or M may be met. The loss via redevelopment of an existing culture, leisure, tourism, or community facility will only be permitted if it is demonstrated that K, the facility, is demonstrably no longer fit for purpose and the site is not viable to be redeveloped for a new community facility, or L, the service provided by the facility is met by an alternative provision that exists within a reasonable proximity. What is deemed as a reasonable proximity will depend on the nature of the facility and its associated catchment area. Or M, the proposal includes the provision of a new facility of a similar nature and of a similar or greater size in a suitable on or off site location. So the proposals under consideration, and it will be assessed against the development plan as a whole, together with national planning policies and guidance. The implications of the proposed redevelopment of the Speedway facility will be part of the planning consideration. So that is their official line from a planning team point of view, Rob. And I know it's difficult and it's very emotionally challenging for many Speedway fans, but let's just, for the benefit of everybody else, remind people that the site is owned by the East of England Agricultural Society. And it is they that have decided to put the site up for sale stroke redevelopment. AEPG are, in effect, partners or agents in that redevelopment. It is not, for me, the council, and I couldn't do it anyway, to spend public money, for example, to re-provision that site, even if I could or I had a site. And believe me, I want to say to you quite sincerely, we at the council, the cabinet and the councillors involved in my team have been racking our brains for months. How can we help assist the Panthers to a new home? And, I have to say, we're at a loss at the moment. We talked about the Greyhound Stadium, but again, a private property that's been bought by, I think, Mick George. We know the owner there. We've even talked about the British car auction site, possibly a site there. So let me just say this to you. From a political point of view or a personal point of view, and I have a great deal of empathy, I will work with you and whoever, fans, owners, whatever we can do to help facilitate something, we will do. But I have to say, nobody officially from the club or anywhere else has approached me or the council in any formal way, which I don't know whether you know that.
I might be able to help out a little bit.
All right, go on. Yeah, I'll shut up. You say something.
What I'm giving you now is information that I've gained through my contacts as a result of us losing the club. So as I understand it, the current owner is looking to retire. Basically, he hasn't got the fight.
You mean the Speedway Club?
Yeah.
As opposed to, right, okay.
Yeah, so himself, the owner, he's saying, this is my last season. When this is done, I'm out. Right. As I also understand it, there's people queuing up ready to buy it off of him because they want to keep the club alive. So that's good news, right?
That would be good news, yeah.
Yeah, so as I understand it, when the last meeting runs, which I think is the 7th of October, he's been given a deadline to clear his stuff out because AGP are going to come in and just bulldoze the stadium. That's it. Like, pretty much as soon as that meeting's done, they're taking the stadium away. So what's frustrating to hear is they're cutting deals with other businesses like DHL. They're giving them like a 5-year contract. We all know that it's, we don't know whether this planning permission is going to be approved or not to start with. And even if it was, no one's going to put a house up for a few years. Like, there is a process. I've lived in Peterborough the whole of my life. I've lived right next to Hampton and the Haddon project. It will be 5 years before anyone digs a trench anywhere. So why is it not possible for everyone to work together to recognise that as new owners going to come in that want to put money into Peterborough, into our economy, for the people of Peterborough, and a couple of years to tide them over in the showground would give them that springboard they need to keep the dream alive. If, the worst case scenario is the stadium is bulldozed in a couple of months and that momentum's lost, it could be gone forever. And this is why the fans are getting a little bit touchy, because we know that the stadium's not, there's no need to pull it down at the end of the year. There's a lot of rumours going around, but AEPG want it off their hands, because then it's one less fight for them to get what they need. You know, whether it's this planning permission or a future one, they can say, you know, the land stood there doing nothing. It's a waste of land. Let's get some houses up, which we know isn't the case. There's people that want to use it in the interim while these things are happening, like DHL and other businesses that until would be happy to have their contracts renewed, including the Panthers, for a couple of years. So I can't see what the issue is, the sticking issue really, for AEPG to earn some money in the meantime with their land that's not going to do anything for a few years, keep the sport alive and allow future owners to look for redevelopment options within the Peterborough area. Just like from a personal background, you know, a bit of information for people on the call that don't know, the Peterborough Panthers have been running at that stadium for 53 years. They've won the Premiership numerous times.
Yeah,
they're in the top league. They, you know, against all odds have won it in some really big matches that have been shown on Sky Sports. It's a big thing, you know. It's coverage that Posh don't get. You know, we are arguably the most successful sports team in Peterborough. The reason why we go there, I go to the football as well sometimes. I take my kids to the football.
Peterborough Sports or Posh?
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, I take my kids to the football as an alternative. You know, my son's into football too. He's 8.
Yeah.
Language is awful. It's that atmosphere, right? At Speedway, you don't get that. Right? My 4-year-old daughter will clap Speedway riders from the other team when they win races. There is multi-generations there. You can see there's grandparents to grandkids. We have 3 generations in my family go. And it's a wholly different atmosphere. It's very inclusive. And, you know, in this day and age of mental health, it is a lot of people's, you know, thing they look forward to. And then to take that away from people is, I can't see a real reason in the short term. Okay, fair enough, AGP are representing people that are thinking about developing houses on there, but we all know that's not going to happen tomorrow. And we know from what I'm hearing, there are people that want to financially input into the club and get it up and going, and ideally have our own land, so we're our, you know, not having to answer to landlords, etc. And make it a viable business, as they have in Manchester at Bellevue. The middle of their pitch is a American football pitch. You see, it's being used for lots of other things. You know, so Peterborough's crying out for that kind of facility.
Well, look, I inevitably, you know, we know AEPG, we know the Speedway Club, everything. So I'll come on to what perhaps we can do to help clarify. I don't know whether the answer will be the satisfactory answer that you need, but a couple of things I'm aware of that noticed quick. This is not just suddenly crept up, by the way. This has been on the cards for quite some time, and you know, it's unfortunate that the club, whoever the owner is or wants to be, has moved no further forward in terms of alternatives. In terms of the timescale, I can't speak for AEPG or what they want to do, but you know, I know that Ashley Butterfield is a reasonable guy. You know, I've met him a few times. The council officers deal with him. I think perhaps if he laid out the timetable, which made it a bit clearer, because these conversations, he may say they've already taken place and I've given an extension, or, you know, we are at the end of the road. And I've no idea in terms of what he envisages or what they envisage as a timetable towards development. But I think perhaps from a communications point of view, he may be best served by putting out exactly what is happening and when. I understand the DHL thing, again, is a temporary issue, which brings in some revenue for the business, because that's what it is a business, whilst they get from point A to point B. And, you know, point B may be, you know, 8 to 10 years in terms of long term, but there may be shorter things. But, you know, we will continue to rack our brains and work with the club and the fans, because that's what's important, you know, to people in their lives. You articulate that very well about your kids and everything. And, you know, as I say, my own family has that same passion for Speedway. And, you know, it's been around as long as I've been around it. The 53 years, I don't think you've seen them all.
No,
so,
no. I mean, I did go when I was very little to start with. I had a little gap when I hit my 20s and other things came in. And then as my kids have come along, I appreciate it, you know, for what it is now. But I mean, I still feel there's there is room for a deal if the right people are around the right table.
Well, look, I can push that. Look, I can push the suggestion, but I want to be perfectly clear. As the leader of the council, we don't have a magic wand.
No,
it is a private property. It is a private enterprise and a private club. Now,
but we do currently have the situation where they are wanting to remove a sporting facility from.
Well, they could remove it anyway. That being the point.
But under the Peterborough plan.
Yeah, no, forget the plan. Forget the plan. Even if they weren't planning, for example, so forget the plan about the bigger scheme. They could stop it if they, I don't know what the leasehold, the arrangements are with the club in terms of legally. But at the end, I'm just trying to be realistic for you and not paint a false picture. I've already said we'll do what we can to help and assist the club and the fans. But I think what I can do is ask AEPG to outline properly in public what their plans are and what the timetable is and what the constraints of that are. Because if people don't know that, I think that might be the issue.
But we do know at the moment planning permission has not been granted.
No, and it may not be. It may not be. And
so there is no need for AGP to have a timescale which is pull down the stadium next week or whatever.
Well, I don't know that. And what I'm saying to you is I will try and get them to publicly state what their timetable is and the rationale in terms of why they're doing what they're doing that affects the Speedway particularly, which is what people like yourself are interested in, and see where we go. And a challenge, even if they said, hey folks, I'll give you another year, because they will argue, I'm sure, that they're already given 2 years or another year. Somebody needs to be working on a plan for where it goes.
We need, it's in everyone's interests when you think about it, if we work together on this. If, like I said, the current owner's done his due and fair play to him, he's kept the club going. It's in his interest the club has a future because he wants to sell the club. And it's in the future buyer's interest that it's got a future. It's in AGP's interest that everyone goes away happy for the sake of Peterborough, if nothing else, let alone the supporters. And they make money out of it. Everyone's making money out of this. I know I'm not a businessman, but I can't see why there can't be an arrangement to suit everybody. I can understand I'm going to ask the questions next week.
I'm going to ask the questions for you. That as I say, because nobody from the club or anywhere else, nobody has formally made representations to me as the leader. Yeah. They may have had some conversation with the council that may not reach me, but what I will do is I will undertake to get some answers. I can't use taxpayers' money. By the way, I have the same requests, whether it's about ice hockey, whether it's about, a Peterborough Town or indeed the Posh, which of course we once owned the stadium. And when we start getting involved in these things, we can't win, to be honest. So it's really challenging circumstances when we talk about sports and fans and everything else. But all I can promise you is I will ask some questions of AEPG, but also keep making representations through the consultation process of planning, which is still live. It's still going. I don't know when the closing date is. I don't know whether Ken knows. He might know, or when the application closes.
I believe it's at the end of the week. I think it's coming up, isn't it? The object where you can object.
Well, my notes say it's still open. Representations, if you've made them as an individual, I can't see the club making them, but fans can. And it's right that people hold the council, the corporate body, to account in terms of the local plan. But as I've said, there are some criteria that I read out from the planning team about whether it meets those thresholds. And I don't know, because I'm not a planner. Quite often we have to make difficult decisions, and I can't approve or I can't reject. And at this point, I'm not even involved in the planning process, because why would I be? Because it's an independent process, and it's a quasi-judicial committee if it goes to committee. So look, can I say to you, I will get AEPG to outline their rationale, which seems you're asking the question, why can't they do it in 2 years' time?
Yeah.
And I will get them to explain what their thinking is, what opportunities there have been to extend the operation, whether there's a possibility of extending it even further now. I don't know. So let's see if we can bottom those things out and get something to you. of which will you be able to share with the fans and on other forums and things?
Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, after this, I've got a few people to email just about how the conversation went. But I mean, again, going back to being a Peterborough person, very proud of the area. This would be a real success story, I think, for the city if we could somehow manage to shoehorn this through. Because you see these things on social media pop up all the time, like Peterborough's the worst place in the world to live, and blah blah blah. And I just like brush it off because
It's just not true.
I've just been to town now for Five Guys with my daughter, and we went to the Hotel Chocolat. It was all right.
Yeah, it's not true.
The sport I know is not as big as football, but we had a world champion in our team this year, a big name. And when he came, it was packed. You couldn't sit down. We need a bigger stadium on those occasions. It was heaving. And the atmosphere was amazing. And I just don't see anything like that else happening. And people will travel from all over England just to come to the showground to see that track because it's known as being one of the best tracks in the world. The racing that you get at that track, you don't get at many other tracks.
Peterborough is unique for sport and things like, for example, switching subject. The run that we do in Peterborough is one of the flattest courses anywhere in Europe, by the way. And that's why people come for the Great Eastern Run. Yeah. So there is a lot of sport in stuff here in Heritage.
It's true. I mean, the bike ride was great. The Tour de Cambridge. Again, the showground. It's come, and we used to sit outside the front of our house clapping people all day long.
Yeah, I don't run the city down, and I'm not going to like some people. I think, we're not perfect. We got a lot of issues.
Yeah.
But this is a great city to live in, and I'm proud to be leading at the moment. Yeah. And look, as I say, I'll wrap up your question there if I may. Ken's made notes, and this obviously is a public recording. So I will task the team within the council, within our communities team, to find out what is going on with AAPG, what their plans are, and see if AEG will respond publicly to your plea and the fans' plea to try and keep it going. As I say, the council can't enforce or do that. It will apply from a planning perspective, the legislation, and make decisions on that. But let's see if we can get some traction. No promises, but at least we can ask the questions. Is that all right?
Yes, fair enough.
Okay, stay online if you want to, as I say.
Yeah, of course I will.
You can listen to all the other stuff that comes across my desk all the time. As I say, it's been an action-packed edition. In fact, we've had to kind of put a load of things together because we've had a number of questions on Speedway. Yours was just one of them. We also had a number of questions on fireworks, believe it or not. And, I completely sympathize with what the questioners are asked, but they're being let off at anti-social hours. And Sam Carter was due to be joining us, but I think, Ken, he's unable to make it now. Or is it he or her, by the way? You can never tell with the names. It could be Samantha or Sam. But do you want to ask the question anyway, Ken?
Yeah, sure. So I'll ask that on Sam's behalf. So he or she
yes,
asks,
no idea.
I would like to find out what is being done regarding antisocial behaviour in the PE1 area. I've made several reports to the police over the past 12 months in relation to multiple occasions of disturbances. The key issue is fireworks. Last night we had a barrage around 10 and 11 p.m. and then again between 1 a.m. and 2:30 a.m. This is a pattern which is getting more frequent and louder. I work from home and I've had occasions where fireworks are going off before midday on sunny days, and they can be on at any time and in any conditions. And Sam adds, not only is this making my life hell, but my poor dog is beyond anxious, and leaving him alone is becoming difficult due to a change in his behaviour. Now he adds, I'm not the only dog owner in my immediate neighbourhood and hear many dogs reacting to fireworks. I've never seen or heard anything like this before, and I've been here a year, and I'm quite shocked, to be honest, having come from London. And Sam ends by asking, could you please advise if the council, environmental health, or the police are involved in trying to solve this issue?
Oh my golly, it must be, weekly I get this question. And the strange thing was, on Saturday morning at 11 a.m., I was out in town just off Padham Road. I was just minding my own business, delivering a few leaflets. 11:30 in the morning, I could hear no end of banging and whizzing and whooshing. And I'm thinking, my golly, 11:30 in the morning on a Saturday. I think it was coming from the community centre around the corner. But I was thinking, if you're having this at that time of day, and it's even more annoying when it's 11 o'clock at night, I'm sure. So I entirely get it, and I sympathize. And it's really challenging to tackle this, because is it antisocial behavior? Is that a police issue? Or is it noise pollution, which is a council issue? It's all sorts of things. And the stress and strain on pets and animals, is great and something I entirely recognize. I've been having lots of discussions with Paul Bristow MP, who, as you might expect, as a fellow Conservative, I talk to him a lot. We're very good friends. And I pushed him to raise a 10-minute rule bill or a private member's bill or something to get a change in the law, particularly around the use of fireworks, because it seems acceptable in some communities. And also, we've had a lot of inward migration to the city, where in other European countries, for example, it might be quite normal and acceptable to use fireworks at any time, and it's become more of the norm. You might expect it around bonfire, and I'm not pointing fingers, but it's more of a general celebration in other communities than perhaps it is or has been in the past here. And there's just been an increase in this, not just in Peterborough, in everywhere. And nobody minds anybody celebrating, but it's not been the norm or acceptable in the past. So it's become a bit of a problem. But it is noise pollution, and the noise pollution team deal with many complaints about fireworks and other issues. So all I can say is you need to report these things and report the misuse of fireworks that result in a nuisance to us. The easiest way to do that is go on the website, peterborough.gov.uk, or you can call the 747474 number, which is a Peterborough number, of course, to report them. So the council to take action for a statutory noise nuisance, it would also be necessary to identify the person or persons responsible, and also to demonstrate that the use of fireworks meets the criminal threshold of causing a substantial interference to reasonable comfort. So 11 o'clock at night, you might think that's a substantial, but 11:30 in the morning, when I was talking about a little while ago, that may be more difficult. So it can be very difficult to establish both of these elements for these short-lived occurrences relating to the use of fireworks. As I say, it's a growing problem. It's also important to note that if a crime has been committed, including fireworks or involving fireworks, such as property damage or underage uses, that is a matter for the police to investigate. Under UK law, fireworks can be used anytime from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., which is why I was saying it needs a change in the law to make this a better situation. So again, if anyone experiences this happening outside of these times, it would be a police matter, because it's against the law. It's not something the council can deal with. So to reiterate, we would encourage anyone who experiences a regular noise nuisance, be that from fireworks, music, that's the other one, I had one at the weekend, music, or DIY, to report these to us. To justify a statutory noise nuisance, the council needs to establish times, duration, frequency that the nuisance affects residents. This is why a log sheet, sounds really boring, a log sheet will be sent in the post for you to record persistent usage over a 4-week period. It's long-winded, it's difficult, it's challenging, because you don't want to stop people having fun and celebrating. As I say, we're a very welcoming city. We have people from all over the world here, which is fantastic. And fireworks to many people are a big, important part of their life. And I wouldn't want to curtail that, but people need to be conscious that probably not doing it at 11 o'clock at night is a good thing, or all the time. So challenging stuff, but do as I said in terms of report it, log it, particularly, by the way, if it's a continuous thing, such as music or fireworks in the same street, week after week after week, you've got to log that. And then we can take some action. And if we can't, the police can. So Sam, thanks for the question. And I'd remind everybody, you're watching, listening to Ask the Leader with me, Wayne Fitzgerald, the leader of Peterborough City Council. If you'd like to be on a future episode, whenever that may be, all you need to do is just email me at asktheleader@peterborough.gov.uk. We'll move on to our next question, which is from Thomas Wright, concerning the provision of bus services in the Stand Ground area. Thomas can't be here tonight either. So Ken, you want to ask the question on his behalf? And I'll just cough while you're doing that because my throat is really croaky.
Yeah, sure. So Thomas asks, when the Standground South development was proposed, it was said that a bus route would run through the heart of that development. I understand that there is currently a Service 5, which serves up to the Morrison's roundabout, but with the development now pretty much completed, is the City Council and the combined authority working together with a development company and Stagecoach to get a service running through Standground South via Apollo Avenue and Bellona Drive? And he adds, all the bus stops have been introduced but are not being utilised. And also, why are both of these roads still barriered off for road users to use?
Oh, well, thanks for the question from Thomas. Our highways team replied as follows. In terms of the issue of the roads being barriered, the roads are barriered off because they will be bus gates in the very near future. Therefore, can only be used by future bus services or emergency services as per the planning consent. We're currently in discussions with the developer, Persimmon Homes, over the completion of bus gates and hope they will be operational in the near future. However, we don't have a definitive time frame for that. In terms of a new service for that area, we are speaking to Stagecoach and the combined authority about this to see if we can get an improved service for residents in the area. I can't bring Steve in here if he knows anything about this particular thing, because there's a lot of work going on regarding bus networks and reviews, and it may not have got to that stage yet, but buses are a very important subject for many people, and they rely on them. Steve, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, thanks, Wayne, and a really important question. The detail of this, I've approached Stagecoach just to find their view on this particular service, this particular route. But more widely, we are carrying out a review of the bus network that we subsidise at the combined authority. There's 70 services across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, with the intention of continuing those services that are performing well, and there are 51 of those. And where there are some that need to be improved, we're looking to work with communities to see how we can improve those services. The general call, though, at the moment is, are there any other demands or any other issues that we can also look at as part of that process? So I think what I can do with this is take that as a suggestion coming from this discussion from Peterborough, pick it up with Stagecoach and talk to them about the plans they have for a commercial service in this area, or if not, whether it's something that should be considered as a subsidised service. And that process will be running over the next 2 months. So I'm happy to pick that up, Wayne, in the next few weeks and certainly come back and see what we can do, having discussed it with Stagecoach.
Great, thanks. Steve, of course, works for the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority, and very much involved in the transport thing. He'll be speaking again in a moment, because I think we're moving towards the end of tonight's questions, which, as I say, you're always welcome to submit a question to asktheleader@peterborough.gov.uk and get yourself on here, or have one of the team read the question for you if your camera is shy. So Standground South buses and bus barriers, hopefully there'll be some great news on that for the future, not too distant future. Of course, you can always get the answer from me on anything by way of an update, whether it's tonight or on anything in the past. So we have, again, I must admit, firstly, before I ask this last question, that I got myself into a bit of hot water last week in terms of a lot of press speculation, public comment about the use of a veto on the local connectivity transport plan, which was a policy put forward by the Labour mayor from the combined authority, of which included the possibility of congestion charging and ULEZ zones coming to Peterborough. Now, it may be said that, you know, that would be a decision for Peterborough. Well, whilst I'm running Peterborough, it won't happen, because it's not something I believe the public would back. But as I can't guarantee that I'll always be running the city, which I have no reason why I should. I couldn't sign up to it as it was. In fact, the mayor actually admitted live on the radio that he actually personally didn't believe in congestion charging. So my view was, why is it in there? Take it out then, and then it would have gone through. So there's been a bit of heat and noise about that. And I only mention it because it's relevant to the next question, because unfortunately, it got twisted into rural bus services. So the LCTP policy is nothing to do with the next question, as I'll explain, but Joe Galt from Wittering has sent in a question. She can't be here tonight. She's got work. But Ken, do you want to ask the question and we'll get to the answer?
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, Jo starts off by saying that she lives in Wittering, which obviously on the outskirts of Peterborough and quite rural. And she goes on to say, as well as being a valued member of Wittering's community, I'm part of the Wittering, Wansford, Castor and Aylesworth bus campaign. And she adds, we've been without a fully programmed bus timetable now for 4 years. And she says, I attended the combined authority meeting on the 31st of May, where you advised that you supported us and we had your backing. But you then went on to decline the vote, which is adjourned until July and then December. So she ends by saying, my question to you is, why have you denied the 4 villages an opportunity to get our bus service reinstated by voting against the bus strategy plan again on the 20th of September?
Rather sadly, I think Jo has mixed things up. As I said, I have actually written to her separately because she couldn't come on this call. The LCTP and the requirement for bus services in rural settings are not connected. Okay, so when we deferred the decision back in May, that was a deferral on the LCTP, but the work that's ongoing about a service review and service reform continues regardless of that policy vote last week or back in May. I just explained that, the policy is a wider policy about all sorts of transport things, including, as I said, the very unpopular suggestion of congestion charging or 15-minute cities, ULEZs, whatever you want to call it, regressive taxes and a war on motorists. And I don't believe that people would want me to support that. However, what I said back in May is true today, when we made a commitment to try and work with the rural parishes, particularly, who again have been robbed of bus services for whatever reason. But I don't run bus services. The council don't run bus services. We pay a levy to the combined authority that goes towards the subsidy of bus services. We're not a bus company. So the complaints really must be directed to bus operators. But again, I can't complain about bus operators making a decision to cut some services that basically were losing them money. So if you had a business and you've got a board and shareholders, it's a really difficult thing to do. But that's why local authorities step in, and indeed the combined authority can step in order to offer alternatives such as subsidized buses. And Steve may tell you or give you a figure about the number across Cambridgeshire, let alone Peterborough, that the council, I think we pay over three point odd million pounds as a levy. Steve, you'll give me the number, I'm sure, towards subsidizing buses, and the county council pay even more. So in times of challenge that the council face and local authorities face about how much money we put into public transport, sometimes there are difficult decisions to be made. But there is silver lining, because there's something called DRT, which is demand responsive transport. And those are the options that the combined authority and ourselves as politicians are looking to introduce to plug some of those gaps where in Wittering, Wansford, Aylesworth and Castor, just, let's not even talk about the number 36 in Thorney and Eye, which has, again, generated a lot of public interest because it affects people's lives. Again, Steve, I'll bring you in a second. I met, coincidentally, the day after that combined authority meeting with the Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State, Richard Holden MP, who is in charge of buses. Today, I met with Mark Harper, who's the Secretary of State for Transport from the DfT. So I push these politicians all the time about, the problems that residents face, particularly in the rural setting, about public transport. So, Steve, do you want to just pick up on a few things, and you can also explain about the positivity of DRT and how the minister reacted to that?
Yeah, thank you, Wayne. Yeah, we've been talking with residents, as you have yourself, in the Wittering, Castor, Wansford, and Aylesworth area. The case has been very powerfully put about the lack of bus services serving those villages. And I think, as you mentioned, residents have been to a number of combined authority meetings to make the case. What we'll do, and we're looking at options as part of that network review that I described a little bit earlier. So looking at where there are gaps in provision and where there are services that we can adjust to make them even better. And this is certainly one of those where we are looking very closely at potential solutions. You've mentioned one, which is demand responsive transport, which some may be aware of the Ting service nearby in Huntingdonshire, where you dial up for a service, and it is more flexible in terms of its coverage, and where it's able to get to and actually can fill gaps, particularly in rural areas that are not covered by scheduled services. So that's one option, but we're also looking at other potential solutions. There is a home to school service that runs through the area, I think into neighbouring Rutland, which we could look at adapting that service to potentially help, as well as talking to operators to see whether there is scope to provide with them a service, whether that's a commercial one or a scheduled one. But all of that will be wrapped up into the network review process that I described earlier, that's running over the course of the next few weeks, and certainly we've got a lot of information that we can play into that and will do. And as I said earlier, the conclusion of that, or the next step in that, is a decision that we'll be taking to the Combined Authority Board at the end of November, 29th of November, and then for implementation of services to start in April 24. So I think the case for the villages that you've mentioned has been well made. We've taken on board the thoughts. The Deputy Mayor, the Combined Authority, has met with residents, and I'm sure we'll want to do so again as we go through this process. So yeah, thank you for the question. Thank you for the engagement, and we are picking up those issues and those requests as part of the network review with those timescales that I've mentioned.
Great, and you may wonder why Steve is on the call, because the Combined Authority have the transport responsibility, whilst we're a highways authority, as is the County Council. We now pay into the Combined Authority, who oversee all the transport functions in terms of the strategic view. So to be clear for Joe and others, because I'm aware that some social media misinformation has been circulating since that meeting, I didn't decline a vote to reinstate bus services in any of the villages. They're two different things. In fact, the contrary. What we and I agreed to that service review that Steve is referring to, and that will go ahead, and hopefully we'll make some progress, because the government minister responsible for buses was very keen, and they talk about zebra funding, and I suggest you Google that. Zebra funding, it's round 3, of which actually the rural elements of that funding become more important in terms of it's to be focused on that. So we're hopeful that we might be able to get some traction on getting some funding with the right bid to support rural services. Inevitably, the bus operators, they need to make a profit, and there are changes. There are buses running around in all parts of the county, at £100 and odd per passenger. I have one in Peterborough that is over, close to £100 per passenger in subsidy it's costing the city council. And that can't be good use of taxpayers' money. We often joke that it's actually cheaper to get everybody a taxi rather than run the bus. So we need to look at these things very carefully and make best use of the available funds we have, and at the same time prioritize the public transport options. But we're looking towards a cleaner, greener future, more stable. I'd like to get the bus depot, which Stagecoach want to heavily invest in, which will see the provision of electric buses coming to Peterborough. despite the mayor denying the funding the other night, by the way, but I'm sure that'll all get passed in the end when he comes down. So let's move forward on a positive note about public transport. Peterborough is punching well above its weight with the Secretary of State here today, Mark Harper, as I say, who is the lead on transport for everything in the UK. And I think he recognised the opportunities on the horizon for Peterborough, which is such a great city. So, Joe, I hope I've reassured you, and you can pass on to all your friends and family and neighbours in the villages and all the Facebook pages that were alive with all this stuff about we've lost the buses. No, we haven't. We're just on the first stop of that journey towards getting a better bus service and hopefully making some improvements in the rural areas such as Wansford, Wittering, Aylesworth, Caster, Thorney, Newborough, you name it. We'll try and do our very best. But again, I remind you, we don't run bus services. We can only help and assist, which I hope to do for Robert, who's sat there patiently. And I hope you've enjoyed the experience, Robert. We have a wide and varied list of topics often to get through. So unless anybody's got any closing remarks to say, I think I'll end tonight's session with just a reminder. You've been listening, watching to me, Wayne Fitzgerald, leader at Peterborough City Council, on our regular Ask the Leader sessions. And if you want to get in touch in the future, whenever that may be, about joining another session, all you need to do is just email asktheleader@peterborough.gov.uk. Robert, thanks for your time. Steve, thanks for your time. And Ken, as ever, thank you for taking the time to join in tonight's session. And you'll be able to catch this on YouTube as normal and play it to your heart's content. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And goodbye for now.